What's good, Royal Republic? Welcome back to another video. Editor Sly here. Glad you could make it. Before we start, please join the Discord community, link down below for me. When you click the link, the invite should appear as shown. Click accept invite for direct access to yours truly, your fellow community, as well as being notified every time we go live. You'll also be able to view all VODs from the Discord server, as well as any YouTube videos, and be notified when I post here on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, around 99% of you guys aren't subscribed to the channel. Make sure you fix that by hitting the subscribe button and turning on all notifications. If you do that, I can find the content for you and we can watch it together. Shout out to all my current subscribers as well as current subs on Twitch. We call y'all citizens, you feel me? And yeah, enjoy the video. Let's go YouTube. We got a video from the dog. Pint is here. This is the absolute worst way to write fights. It's always gonna prefer a little like. And as always, make sure y'all check out the Discord.com link down in the description. The best way to get general access to me. You'll also be notified every time I post a YouTube video, which is twice daily, and every time we go live on Twitch. So tap in with the Discord.com. Without further ado, go straight into it.
What makes a fight good? Is it the scale, the strategy, the emotional weight, or is it just having to play a numbers game? Yeah, I have a feeling that's not that last one. According to its definition, a fight is a violent confrontation or...
I like the way he kind of scripts his videos, and like his approach isn't just like for example, the thumbnail is like, it's not clickbait, or not thumbnail, title. It's not clickbait, but it's like an action title. It's like a call to action. You see that and you get intrigued. But he's not just talking about the absolute worst way to write fights. He kind of intros into the topic and then trickles down into what in particular he's focusing on. And then that added with the authenticity present, as well as his unique style of editing, makes his videos, I feel, unique.
Or struggle, usually involving the exchange of physical blows or the use of weapons. Simple enough, but if that were all that mattered, why is it that some fights feel gripping and intense, while others feel more like power scaling slop? Well, nowadays, a fight isn't even limited to just fights and weapons. See Death Note for an example of mind battles just as brutal as those fought with swords. No, at its core, fighting in stories exists for just one reason.
I think, before he says that, I think personally, fights in like anime, but fights in general, well no, let's say fights in anime. I would say fights in anime are really there to show a juxtaposition and show a contrast, because that is why you have fights like Death Note, which feel just as kind of gripping, but it's like a logical battle. It's a contrast of ideologies, a juxtaposition of who's right, and it brings fighting to a kind of third dynamic that brings it closer to real life, where like things are in shades of gray rather than black and white, right? One person is right in your eyes, right? But you can see that the other person isn't wrong per se. You just don't agree with them. And I think no matter what the fight is, there's some ideology or some thought process, or whether it be a juxtaposition of resources or background of like the characters, it serves as a point to put two beings, two things against each other, rather than just, oh, I'm bashing you with physical power, or I'm using my telepathy to hurt your mind or something. You feel me?
To achieve something through force. While some stories let conflicts play out through dialogue, drama, and tensions, others take a more simple approach and say, if I beat you, then I've won. Thus, fights become a powerful narrative device. They engage the audience, drive the plot, and can even be used to express the writer's message if executed well enough. This formula defines most battle manga, where characters overcome their obstacles through mostly strength and skill alone. But no matter how well a fight is choreographed, no matter how many perfectly cut cubes appear on screen, and no matter how many impact frames you add,
Impact frames be goated, boy. Come on, man. I didn't even notice these right here. That's kind of tough. I noticed this one. I noticed this one. I never noticed this one. But yeah, you know when them cubes come out, the animators getting big.
there's one thing that will always kill its impact, and that is riding through power levels. Power levels didn't just appear out of nowhere. They stem from a natural human instinct, and
I think what he's gonna build to kind of goes to what I'm talking about. How fighting is like a contrast. Like this conflict is like a juxtaposition of ideals, maybe morals, etc. I think what he's gonna point out is how like power levels, by nature, kind of take the focus away narratively from what you're fighting for and make it a battle of numbers, make it a battle of this person is stronger, whether it be because they trained harder or they've trained longer. Experience gaps sometimes is the reason someone wins a fight, or it just be out of like um sheer difference in like status and like how you were born versus those fights like I was talking about where the conflict is illustrating and putting out into the air a physical manifestation of a juxtaposition or a clash between ideals, status, morals, etc.
that is the desire to quantify strength. From ancient myths of warriors with the strength of 1,000 men, to RPGs where numbers dictate a character's power, we've always tried to measure and rank strength in ways that feel concrete. In storytelling, especially those with battle-driven narratives, power levels serve a simple purpose. They give a clear sense of progression and scale. If character A has a power level of, say, 5,000, and character B has a power level of 1,000,
it's very clear.
The 5 carry the 1. Character A is obviously going to win. Yeah. It's an easy and admittedly lazy way to establish power.
I think power levels is done right when it's something similar where it's like, oh, say this person has a power level of like 1,000, this person has a power level of like 1,200 or something. But technique can bridge the gap. Only time I feel like power levels gets too lazy, like incredibly lazy, is when it's a situation where like there's a power level gap so high that it's supposed to be insurmountable. Like I have a power level of 100,000, you have a power level of 1,000,000. That's not this should not be a fight that's entertaining to watch, right? Unless like, someone's hiding their power level, etc. But those fights where it's like, oh, I am 2 degrees stronger than you or something, but they use technique to like hold on, they still lose, but it shows that power levels aren't everything. The power level has to be there to suit some type of narrative, I feel, to help better drive the story and have maybe even a contrast to already existing juxtaposition to like the battle of morality or battle of philosophies when these two people are clashing, and then you have these different power levels that tell a story of what they've done to get here.
Or dominance, without the need for deep storytelling or complex character dynamics. Of course, the explosion of power levels as a trope can largely be traced back to one franchise, Dragon Ball Z. The moment Dragon Ball Z introduced the famous "It's over 9,000!" power levels became ingrained in anime culture. The Scouter, a device used by Frieza's forces to measure power levels, gave characters and audiences a tangible way to understand strength differences. Now, unfortunately, what a lot of people didn't realize was the fact that Dragon Ball, in of itself, was critiquing the idea of using power levels. Time and time again, the Scouts
with people hiding power levels. I mean, even in OG Dragon Ball, races didn't even matter. It was about your technique as a fighter. And people kind of took what did exist, what like when power levels were used in a way where it's like, oh, Frieza's now this much stronger than us. So we're kind of fodder. They took those examples and kind of ran with it, and that's what we see in modern day. Like there'd be a character that's like hiding their power level or something. Whole time they're like 10 times stronger than you, and they just like reveal it, and now it's like you can't do anything. Like your punches don't do anything. You're not fast enough, etc. You can't even see the move.
Fighters would actively fail to accurately measure the strength of a character, as the fighters' power levels fluctuated wildly and hardly gave an accurate reading on their strength. The entire point was that relying on something as static as power levels to dictate strength in the first place was ridiculous. So much more goes into a fight than just numbers and stats. Unfortunately,
For sure, especially because I feel like Goku kind of symbolizes like having heart, while Vegeta symbolized chasing power, right? Goku chased, let's not say heart, that's like more of a fan interpretation of wanting Goku to be like this hero, which Goku has said that he's not, which I think kind of pushes the heroic agenda. But Goku chases mastery while Vegeta chases power. I think one of the things that had me most driven to Vegeta as a character early on is his technique, his ability to be skillful in combat. He had more techniques than Goku in terms of like key control, etc. Right? But it's not like Krillin or Yamcha where like he's actually weak. No, he's strong and has this type of control. That's why Tien is like my favorite Earthling. He just had good key control and he has interesting techniques, right? And even Vegito, which just off the name, you're led to believe there's more Vegeta in there. Spirit Sword. We're using like these technical techniques and things of that nature, while in actuality, over time, Vegeta just chased power. Same way he did in the beginning. He just realized there was more to Warrior than just power, but he still chased power. And in doing so, it kind of felt like the thing that I thought made him unique got dwindled down when he was chasing Goku. And in doing so, he was never going to catch up to Goku, if that makes sense. If you're chasing someone who's constantly improving, will you improve? 100%. Can you become better than them? Not all the time, right? Unless there's something there like, oh, I have 2 times the XP, which ass full of doom, right? But if you're chasing someone who's constantly growing and you're using other people to measure your standards rather than chasing mastery, what you tend to notice is you'll work harder when they're super far ahead of you, or you'll get discouraged when they're super far ahead of you. And then when you catch up to them, you'll either A, get discouraged, or B, stop working entirely because you believe that you've closed the gap. It like your strength and your dream is based off your perception of someone else rather than attaining something tangible that is like ever growing, like master.
Fortunately, though, quite a lot.
That's why Goku and them went crazy when they were like focusing on like getting the key efficiency and stuff right with Super Saiyan, opposed to Vegeta and Trunks kind of just like trying to push past Super Saiyan. Like, oh well, if emotions will fuel that, I mean, and then they just became really buff, and then it was like not efficient for fighting.
A lot of writers and a massive portion of the anime community didn't quite get that memo. We do love the power scaling community, don't we? Thus, the idea stuck. Other anime and manga latched onto the concept of numerical strength ranking, often as a lazy way to justify victories or build tension. Instead of making fights engaging through strategy, tension, or character development, power levels turn them into grade 3 equations. Whoever has the bigger number wins. The problem is that this approach strips fights of all suspense, creativity, and even sometimes narrative weight.
And like I said, I agree with him here. I figure he was leading his point to this. Like I said, the power levels kind of overshadow what the fight is for, which is to show that juxtaposition or that conflict of like interests or morals, etc. I don't want to sound like a broken record, right? But I don't necessarily agree with the fact that power levels always. He never said always, right? But I'm saying I want it to be known I don't believe power levels always strip a battle of its narrative weight. And like I said earlier, when it's closer, like maybe a gap of 500 if we're in the thousands, right? I feel like it can be used to narratively like show that not only does power level change as you fight, even though the numbers don't change, your determination, your motivation, your thinking is important. Like, you can't quantify those things, but what you can quantify is how much you can lift, right? But even if you can lift a ton or something, if you're still human, it still takes the same amount of ounces of pressure on your jaw to knock you out. So if you can't get the blows off, it don't matter, right? But anime's concept of power levels is power, speed, or speed, strength. You don't want to use the same. You don't want to use the word in the definition, but it takes speed, strength, and all these factors and puts them together. But if you're fighting a more flexible fighter, that can give them an advantage because they can come up with a technique on the fly. Those things matter, and that's why I kind of enjoy Fairy Tail, because power levels do exist where it's like, okay, this person is like Guildmaster class, just about from what they've been showing. But time and time again, you're shown that type advantages. It's like Pokemon too. Type advantages don't always mean a win. Power levels don't always mean a win because you can constantly fluctuate for power, and with enough motivation and determination, certain things can be overcome. Now, obviously, there are some times, like when Natsu was fighting Gildarts to try to get the S rank joint, there are certain power gaps that you cannot overcome. And like that, you can't overcome them with time. You can't overcome them on the spot like that.
In some of the worst cases, this actively makes the story worse. The Seven Deadly Sins kind of sucks, but it wasn't always this way. When the series first debuted, the fights were honestly some of the best I'd seen in shonen. They had a strong mixture of tension, unpredictability, and of course, raw hype. Battles inevitably relied on some degree of raw power, yes, but more than that, there was also a heavy reliance on the characters' unique abilities and some admittedly clever strategies, forcing characters to overcome opponents through actually creative applications of their skills. One scene that will forever live rent-free inside of my head, aside from literally everything Escanor did across the entire show, man, he carried that series, is the moment where Gil Thunder throws his spear from countless miles away, and Meliodas barely manages to catch it before turning it back around and throwing it right back at him. From this small interaction alone, the levels of strength both characters are capable of are given to the audience without the need for a single line of dialogue or defined strength number on the screen. And yet, despite the author clearly knowing how to establish a character's strength without the need for power levels, I don't know, maybe he just stopped caring.
I think you can easily see power levels as like this cheat way of lazying out of fights. You can also see it as like it's kind of like how some people don't like watching anime where there's always internal dialogue or a narrator explaining everything that's happening because it annoys them and like takes away from the tension and the narrative of the story. It becomes boring to watch or read, right, for certain manga or manhwa. So I get that 100%, and I think it is important to have those moments where it doesn't need to be said. Like, for example, in Fairy Tail, they don't go, oh, this guy's way stronger than me. Like the Guildart scene I was just talking about, he just flares his aura. That's it. And then the island starts shaking, and now it's like, oh, this is why he's S-class. This isn't a power level. This is a ranking that you have to obtain via this test. We've seen Natsu boxing with Loxus in S-class, right? So, who should be comparable to Guildarts, but these aren't power levels. It's like there's levels to this within your rank. A rank is different from a power level. So I think it is important for artists or author to be able to show these like quantifiable levels without having to quantify them in terms of these numbers, because sometimes is it helpful? Yeah, like you gotta show like Hunter x Hunter, bro, with like these complicated nin abilities, or JoJo with like some complicated stand abilities. Yeah, explain that. But power is something intrinsically you should be able to see, and if the reader can't see that, the author can even use that to their advantage because there's even more tension there. You don't know who's gonna win, even though this is way stronger if you was really paying attention. You feel me?
Still don't know what was worse for the series, this or making every single character like 9-year-olds. Midway through the series, the Seven Deadly Sins introduced a numerical ranking system for every character's strength using a device called Balor's Eye to assign a specific number to each fighter, immediately draining all fights of their tension when used. Let me ask you a simple question.
Yeah.
Even if you don't write, how would you introduce an intimidating antagonist? Would you show them performing some
I'm realizing he has like a slow cadence when he speaks. Not brain rot slow, but like maybe like 1.1. Something like that.
insane feat of strength, or perhaps an instance of
There we go. It's like it's perfect. It is perfect because your tone, like I've seen videos, like the speed of your delivery matters and keeps like your audience engaged. But like I'm listening to it and I'm like, it's kinda like he pauses between joint. But if you're reading a script, you know. I mean you come up with a script, so reading a script is not a problem. But I'm saying you might have like a blooper or something might have in the back. You might have to cut stuff together. So I'll put a little bit of speed on it for y'all.
of overwhelming cruelty, or maybe you could slap a big fat arbitrary number over their head and call it a day. The series used to do the former, but by the time the Ten Commandments arrived, well, rather than showcasing boost in power through at the very least a slightly bigger explosion when attacking or something, it would be, wow, their power level is so much higher, or no way, they had a secret second form and now their power level has increased again. Boring.
Yeah. But I was literally just saying that, like when they have to say what's happening, it takes away the tension and makes people bored.
But even beyond this, the most annoying use of power levels has to be when it's used to show a character's progress. Imagine for a second you have a friend who loves to play football or soccer for my majority American viewers. He goes off to some academy for like 5 years, and when he finally comes back, you're wondering how exactly he's grown better. Has he learned more about positioning and tactics? Has he developed some skill moves? Or at the very least, has he learned how to shoot the ball differently? Nope. His shoot strength is now slightly higher, and that's about it. That's pretty much how it feels when this method is used to show a character's progress. Like,
you feel me? He's illustrating what I was saying perfectly. It's like, it takes away the entertainment, it takes away the shock value, and it even arbitrarily makes accomplishments less meaningful, right? And it's because the technical aspect of things, like techniques and, for example, right, we were just talking about with football, right? Positioning, his ability to man mark, tactics. Those are things that when you hear, you can obviously go, oh yeah, he can man mark more people now. He has a better awareness. He can see more people on the field and effectively apply, like, say, like help defensive sorts. I'm not too into football. I'm using basketball terms here, but help defensive sorts while still marking his man. That would be a way of quantifiably saying how his man marking ability has improved. That is way better than saying, yeah, his shot, which was like B tier, is not A tier. His shot's more powerful. It would be better to say something like, oh, his finesse shots have more curve, and he's able to allow his shots to curve at, you know what I'm saying? And even then, you wouldn't say it. You would kind of just show it. And if someone's thinking it, that can be the case, but it has to be phrased as a thought, because I just feel like there's something in our brain that makes it turn off, like that switch that is like entertainment and like enjoyment when we feel like it's a narrator talking, you know?
Meliodas went off to unlock his true forbidden power, and when he finally succeeded, the only noticeable difference was his invisible number going up. This approach not only massively simplifies the possible complexity you could have gained through your character's training, it also forces this extremely linear progression of power, which just stunts your world and removes all interest from the fights. I really hate it when a character goes off to train and the only tangible difference is that they can destroy bigger things. If the 7 Deadly Sins had stuck to its earlier method of showcasing strength through feats, abilities, and creative combat, its fights could have remained engaging throughout the series. Instead, the introduction of power levels flattened the narrative stakes and made battles more of a numbers game. This is the perfect example of why power levels are one of the worst ways.
I'm not like overly peeved about that to where it makes it unwatchable, because again, I still mess with 7 Deadly Sins, right? Minus them selling the animation. I still mess with the show. I still like the show. I still like the tough moments. It's just when he's like what he's talking about right now, I agree. And I feel like if people become more aware about this, I feel like we can get more of the things that we enjoy when it comes to like these types of shows, rather than these like blanket statements and these just, oh, let's just add a bigger number type thing.
Ways to write fights. Rather than enhancing storytelling, they reduce it to a predictable, formulaic mess, where victory is determined before the fight even begins. Unless you pull out a bullshit random transformation, as most writers tend to do. But at that point, why even have power levels in the first place? Luckily, the sequel to the series at least seems to have corrected this mistake. But I'm not gonna read that for other obvious reasons. Enjoying the video so far? Well, consider hitting that like button and...
I know what he's talking about. He's talking about Lancelot. Hey, I've already subscribed. Hit that bell like y'all should down below. I've already liked. We always pre-fire like, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully you pre-fire like to this video.
Subscribing. It's completely free, but would help me out a great deal. Last time, only 1.3% of you guys were subscribed.
Look, I'm trying to tell y'all, I'm adding like for the intro, I'm gonna take something like this and I'm gonna make an intro for y'all. That's why the intros I'm making shorter, and then I'm gonna make the intro, which I'm gonna try to keep short so like y'all can get into the meat and potatoes of the video. I'm trying to keep it shorter. I'm gonna try to keep it like shorter than 1:30, and then I'll make an outro, which will just have like all the socials and stuff. Big things coming soon.
To be fair, we have managed to double that, so thank you. Anyway, consider subscribing and let's get back to the video. So if power levels are the worst way to write fights, then how should you do it? Well, let me introduce you to a little series called... In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, every single fight is a puzzle between the main cast and the relevant antagonist.
Yeah.
Araki doesn't rely on raw strength or numbers.
That's important too. In any fight, it is a battle for, like, especially in JoJo, because they're kind of just humans. They just have stands. When any fight, it is important to figure out your opponent's power. Not like literally, but like their strengths, it's like an S, and then their weaknesses, and then how you can take advantage of that. You can exploit that in a way to help you win. That's how majority of fights would work. That's the same way how fights would work in IRL. Like if you're boxing somebody, if someone just runs up on you, tries to fight you right now, and they're spamming rights, you have two things you can think of. Either they've had formal boxing training, right, and they may be left-handed, so they're jabbing and stuff with their right, so they can catch you with the left, so you become wary of the left, or you know they have an over-reliance on their right. So what you start doing, you start kind of infighting and going more to this side, right? Because their right is on this side. So they keep throwing that, and you stay on this side, you keep this guard up. If they do come with that left, you feel me? That is how real fights work. And with powers, it only becomes more interesting, right? It only adds more layers to it. But when you dumb it down, because there's powers there, it's still entertaining, but it takes that dimension out of the combat. Like, another good example of this, I would say, is like Soul Eater. Because you have to, like, have your resonance right. Everyone has, like, kind of their own abilities. But there are main, like, pathways that are used that can determine how a fight goes. You feel me?
Numbers to determine the outcome of his battles, instead allowing the strategy and creativity of each new encounter to speak for itself. Unlike traditional battle manga where the strongest fighter is granted the win, JoJo fights operate under a different set of rules. The primary one being that every single ability has its limits. No character is outright invincible. Yeah. Even the most powerful abilities have clear strengths, weaknesses, and drawbacks. Yeah. A seemingly weak stand...
I told y'all, I swear he made the video about like powers and how like you need the limitations, weaknesses, and drawbacks. I knew it was bro. But yeah, so I was saying that's important narratively.
Can defeat a stronger one if cleverly applied. Next, tension doesn't come from a difference in strength or feats. It comes primarily from the unknown. Yeah. In other shonens, you're meant to be afraid of the current antagonist because he can like blow a mountain up or something. In JoJo,
no, because that nigga Aizen stopped Ichigo's theme song with his finger.
You're afraid of the current antagonist because a Glock just popped out of a folded piece of paper and your balls are about to explode. In most fights, the enemy's ability isn't immediately obvious. Usually, it's based on some weird fun fact that Araki probably picked up in a science journal before applying it as an antagonist's ability. Thus, JoJo's protagonists must analyze, adapt, and counter their opponent's abilities mid-battle, forcing a conflict of both brute force and of the mind. Another reason to love the fights in JoJo is how the cast's abilities evolve. Your stand's limitations never really increase. If anything, there are more cases of stand abilities getting worse with time. Instead, protagonists must find and discover new ways to use their abilities based on what they are already capable of. Josuke learning to track people down using his healing ability, Joiner realizing he can heal people by turning the objects inside of them into flesh. Pretty much everything Jolyne does with Stonefree. These are all examples of characters becoming more versatile and useful in fights without directly gaining a direct power-up to their abilities. Overall, this kind of unpredictable dynamic is what makes fights so engaging. When the audience doesn't know how a fight will immediately end, they are invested. Both sides, both the villains and the heroes, have the chance to turn the tables at any moment through creative and unexpected uses of their abilities. Contrast this with power level based fights where the strongest character always wins, and it's easy to see why fights like JoJo are so much more compelling. By focusing on tactics, unpredictability, and tension, Araki ensures that every battle is engaging and memorable, without ever needing a single instance of power levels to dictate the outcome. You may have noticed a tiny little lie in my last point. JoJo's isn't entirely stat-free. Araki has implemented a system called stand stats that orchestrates what each individual stand is capable of. This is what I consider a middle ground between power levels and complete freeform scaling.
Yeah, I would say that's more right. For example, I talked about the shooting when it comes to like football. In like terms of B and A, they do that in Blue Lock as well. But they also talk about the technique, and a player rarely ever grows because their shooting went from B to A mid-game. It's because their thinking changed mid-game. That is the most real-life applicable way to become stronger. That is the most relatable thing for your audience to like know that a character's become stronger. That is one of the most ways to improve the appeal of a character. You know how many characters people enjoy because they have a stupid ability, they just make it really good. Or characters who have like a good ability, they just make it OP. You know what I'm saying? Or players who have characters that have a really, really good ability and are trash with it or something. It triggers more engagement with the audience. And it's because, in part, it's more relatable.
Which I call power rankings. And almost every single modern shonen anime uses them. Unlike power levels, which are a specific numeric indication of strength, power rankings are more or less categories. These are your sorcerer grades in Jujutsu Kaisen, your shinobi organization system in Naruto, and your Gote 13 ranks in Bleach. Basically, they are categories of fighters, where the higher you go, the stronger a character is expected to be. You have more specialized cases like JoJo's, where specific physical metrics are measured. And you have more broad cases, where fighters are just generally expected to be better at everything across the board the higher in rank you go. There are many benefits to this system, as it strikes a middle ground.
Quick point. I think, to add on to what he's about to say, another benefit of this system is there are people who are in these ranks that don't follow the conventions of that rank. Like, there could be someone who's like, oh yeah, this person's S rank, but they've made it here only through healing. Something like that. It gives more room for those interesting characters where they've hit a rank, but they've done it their own way. And those are characters that people tend to admire more when compared to some of the other people who are just like there and have hit that rank.
Where it gains all the benefits of power levels without removing as much of the tension. For starters, the audience can immediately understand what bracket of power a character is from their ranking alone, which can be used to effectively build hype for specific characters while not spoiling exactly how powerful they are like power levels would. While it still is obvious that one person in a higher rank should beat someone from a lower one, for those within the same rank, the audience can be led to believe that the fight could go either way. Another great advantage to the system is that it immediately places an upper ceiling to the verse. Verses without upper ceilings face the issue of infinite escalation. where characters can almost endlessly continue to grow in strength without needing to really apply any new knowledge or complex strategies to do so. For most of Dragon Ball's runtime, Goku could do like 10,000 more push-ups and suddenly be twice as strong as he was last week without really needing to do anything special. Meanwhile, in series like Jujutsu Kaisen, special grades were immediately introduced from the get-go to represent the cap of the verse, and across the entire series, that ceiling is never really replaced. This system allows authors to engage in power scaling without having to use hard metrics. You gain all the hype of someone with a bigger number, or in this case ranking, suddenly appearing into the plot, without essentially spoiling the outcome of all their fights. At their core, fights in storytelling should be engaging, dynamic, and meaningful. Whether it's an intense battle of strength, a clash of ideals, or a strategic mind game, a well-written fight keeps the audience invested because the outcome isn't predetermined by a simple number. Power levels strip fights of all of this by reducing them to a mere comparison of numbers. As we saw with the 7 Deadly Sins, this approach makes battles more predictable and removes that excitement that makes the story fun. I'd much rather see an antagonist do some insane feats to display their strength than I would a number popping up above their head. On the other hand, series like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure prove that strategy, intelligence, and adaptability make for far better fights than sheer power ever could. When characters must use their wits instead of just overpowering their opponents, every battle becomes a puzzle that both the protagonist and the audience can solve. Because at the end of the day, even if the power scaling community might say otherwise, the best fights aren't about who's stronger. They're about who's smarter, craftier, and more determined. When a fight is driven by...
See, he was speaking more on like the intricacies of the nuances of a fight. I was speaking more to what's behind the fight. But I think we're talking about it like similar things.
By narrative stakes, clever tactics, and character depth, it becomes memorable. But when things are driven by hard numbers, it becomes so much more forgettable. That's why power levels aren't just a bad way to write fights. They're the absolute worst. Thank you for watching the video. Feel free.
Hey man, shout out to Pints is here. That was absolute worst ways to write fights. What is you guys' take on that? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, I appreciate y'all for sticking tuned and watching to the end of the video. And yeah, man, you know what time to find me next. Peace.